Everyone at the group session went silent, especially her mother. It was the kind of silence that doesn't just fall, it collapses like a building mid-implosion. Not even the ticking wall clock dared interrupt it. Her hand was frozen on her lap, her mouth slightly parted, and her eyes, God, her eyes, flicked to me as if begging me to say it wasn't true, that I'd doctored the audio, that she'd somehow never said his name like that. But I had the recording, and it was her voice. My wife, Rachel, crying out Daniel in a tone I hadn't heard in years, not since our first winter together, tangled beneath a shared blanket and two clumsy hearts trying to beat as one. Daniel, her therapist, her just a friend. I didn't want to play it. I swear to God I didn't. I brought it to the group session as a last resort, as proof in case she tried to gaslight me again. But when her mother, the woman who had always seen me as the clumsy architect of Rachel's unhappiness, looked at me and said, maybe if you were more emotionally available, she wouldn't have needed a therapist in the first place. Something inside me cracked. That was when I pulled out the phone. I didn't preface it, didn't raise my voice. I just tapped the screen, scrolled to the audio file, and hit play. No warning, no build-up. Just Rachel's voice echoing through the beige therapy room. Daniel, oh my God, Daniel, don't stop. And then the silence. Let me back up. I met Rachel during a volunteer project upstate. We were both hauling timber for a storm-damaged home when she turned to me with a crooked grin and said, "You've got soft hands for a guy lifting lumber." I told her they were piano hands. She said, "Good. Then you'll know how to handle something delicate." She had that kind of presence, teasing, magnetic, like she already knew what tomorrow would feel like, and just wanted to see if you could keep up. And for a long time I did. Or at least I thought I did. We were good for each other in the way that fire is good for cold hands. Warming, a little dangerous, but so necessary. We had the late-night dance sessions in our socks, the weekend road trips where we'd fight over playlists, and then make up in roadside diners. And when the first miscarriage happened, I held her while she sobbed into my chest until the sun came up. She whispered, "You're my home." I believed her. She started seeing Daniel after the second one. She said she needed to talk to someone who wasn't me. "You're grieving too," she told me. "It's not fair to unload it all on you." Fair. That word kept coming up. When she stopped initiating affection, when she started pulling away in every room we were in, when I found her laughing at her phone like she used to laugh with me, it was all, somehow, about being fair. Daniel was her emotional scaffolding, as she put it once, almost proud of the metaphor. "He helps me understand my pain," she said. I nodded, trying to be supportive, even when I noticed that her therapy appointments started getting longer, then later in the evenings. Sometimes they were in person, other times they were off-site. I asked why. She said he was experimenting with different therapeutic environments, parks, cafes, walks, always public, always safe. But I knew. I knew from the way she started dressing on Thursdays. I knew from the sudden gym membership, the return of her signature perfume, the cautious guilt in her eyes when I hugged her from behind. I knew from the instinct only a man trying not to be paranoid can understand, that gut-twisting awareness that something real is slipping out of reach, and you're being handed crumbs to keep you quiet. I didn't confront her. Not at first. Instead, I did something I never thought I'd do. I went to one of her therapy sessions. Not with her. I waited in the lobby, pretending I was there to see someone else. Watched her walk in. Watched Daniel follow 10 minutes later, hand brushing hers a little too familiarly. I noticed how he smiled at her, the way men do when they've already seen a woman vulnerable and naked in every way that matters. Still, I didn't act. I told myself I needed proof. I bought a cheap audio recorder the next day, slipped it into the lining of her favorite tote, the tan one with the broken zipper she never took to the office. I felt disgusting, like a man folding into the very stereotype she used to joke about. Insecure, possessive, paranoid. But I wasn't paranoid. Not when I played the first recording and heard the silence of a room interrupted by faint, breathy laughter. Not when I heard the scrape of furniture and a rustle that didn't sound like therapy. Not when, 6 sessions in, I caught her voice saying his name with such aching need that I dropped the recorder. "Daniel. Oh my God, Daniel." That moment didn't feel like heartbreak. It felt like being erased. Like someone took every memory we built. Every Christmas morning, every late-night drive, every "I love you" whispered across pillowcases, and redacted it with a black marker. I didn't plan to tell anyone. What good would it do? We were already unraveling, just slower than most. But then came the group session. Her idea. Couples therapy, but with both families present. It'll help us face things, she said. What she meant was, it'll help me face her narrative. So there we sat. Me, Rachel, her mother, her sister, my brother, the therapist. It was cordial at first. Civil even. But civility is just a mask that fits poorly over guilt. And when her mother called me emotionally stunted, when Rachel said I never fully processed our losses, when her sister added, it's no wonder she needed Daniel. I couldn't take it anymore. I tapped the phone, hit play, and Rachel's voice filled the room. Silence. Shock. A tear slid down her mother's cheek. Not for me, not even for Rachel, but for the illusion, the carefully preserved image of a marriage they'd all tried to believe was worth saving. Rachel didn't speak. Not at first. She just stared at me, mouth open, breathing shallow. And then she said 3 words I'll never forget. Where did you? I stopped her with a look. One she hadn't seen on my face since the day we said, I do. A look that didn't beg for forgiveness or ask for explanation. It simply said, now you know. The next morning, she was gone. No note. No text. Just her side of the closet stripped bare, hangers swaying like wind chimes in a storm. The bed looked untouched, except for the small indent on the edge where I sat for an hour in the dark, still holding the phone. I didn't play the recording again. Once was enough. Once was too much. The session had ended with the kind of silence that echoes louder than shouting. My brother muttered something about getting air. Rachel's sister looked like she wanted to slap me. Her mother. God. Her mother looked broken. Not because of what her daughter had done, but because I'd forced her to see it. Rachel hadn't cried. She hadn't apologized. She'd just stared at me like a woman realizing her reflection wasn't what she thought it was. And then she left. That morning, I went to work like nothing had happened. I nodded at the receptionist, sat through meetings, even joked about weekend plans I didn't have. It felt like autopilot, like I was piloting the plane of my life through a storm with no visibility, hoping I didn't crash into something I couldn't see yet. At lunch, I opened her last message. A text sent late the night before, while I was still driving home. I never wanted to hurt you. You have to believe that. I didn't respond. Not because I didn't have words. I had too many. But none of them would have reached her. Not the real her. Not the version of her that had once pressed her forehead against mine and whispered, promise you'll never stop fighting for us. She stopped first. I started therapy the next week. With someone who wasn't Daniel. Her name was Grace, and she had eyes like she'd already seen the worst in people, but still held space for their best. I told her everything. Not all at once, but in pieces. About the miscarriages. The distance. The laughter that turned into polite silence. And then, the recording. Grace didn't flinch. She just asked one question. When did you first feel her slipping away? Funny how nobody ever asks that. Everyone wants to know the breaking point. The crash. The scream. But no one ever asks about the first hairline fracture. The quiet ones that split a foundation long before the walls cave in. I told her it was the night we sat in bed, watching a movie, and she flinched when I reached for her hand. A small movement. Barely noticeable. But it wasn't about the flinch. It was about what came after. She didn't take my hand back. 2 weeks passed. Still no contact from Rachel. Her mother texted once to say she was taking some time to process. Her sister sent me a long message full of blame disguised as pity. I deleted both. I wasn't interested in managing their grief. I was trying to survive my own. One night, I walked into the closet and found something she'd left behind. An old sweater I'd bought her during our trip to Vermont. Soft, oversized, pine green. She used to wear it when she felt safe. It still smelled like her. I sat on the floor and held it like it was a memory I could wrap around myself. That was the night I realized. I wasn't angry. I was exhausted. Anger requires energy. Rage burns hot. But betrayal chills you. It's a slow freeze, starting in your chest and spreading outward until even your memories feel numb. Until even the good ones feel like lies. A month later, she called. Blocked number. I picked up anyway. Hi, she said. Just that. No preamble. Her voice was quiet, like she'd shrunk. I didn't respond. I'm in Maine, she said. At my aunt's. I didn't know what to say. I waited. She continued. It wasn't supposed to happen. It was emotional at first. I didn't plan for it to become anything else. A pause. He helped me feel seen, she whispered. I know how that sounds. I know it's not an excuse. I closed my eyes. You didn't tell him you were married at first, did you? Silence. That was all the answer I needed. She asked if we could meet. Not to fix things, she said. I owe you a real conversation. I agreed. Not for closure. Not out of hope. Just because sometimes the last page of a story has to be read aloud to be real. We met at the coffee shop where we used to go after doctor's appointments. The ones that always ended with more questions than answers. She looked older. Not in a bad way. Just weathered. Like a woman who'd walked through a storm barefoot. We sat across from each other, and for a long time, neither of us spoke. Finally, she said, I don't expect you to forgive me. Good, I said. She flinched. But I am sorry. I nodded. For what? She looked surprised. For everything. That's not specific, I said. Be specific. She swallowed. For lying. For pulling away and pretending I wasn't. For turning someone who loved me into a stranger. I stared at her for a long time. Then I said, You didn't turn me into a stranger. You just stopped recognizing me. And then I asked the question that had been burning in my chest since the moment I hit play on that recording. Did you love him? She didn't answer right away. She looked out the window. Her fingers trembled around her cup. I loved what he made me feel, she said finally. I don't know if that's the same. I nodded slowly. It is, and it isn't. We talked for an hour. About us. About the mess. About how love can become a ghost long before it leaves the house. She cried. I didn't. When she stood to leave, she hesitated. If you ever want to talk again, she started. I think we just did, I said. She smiled, sad and small. Then she walked away. And this time, I didn't stop her. It's strange, the things you notice when a chapter truly ends. The silence didn't feel heavy anymore. Just still. I'd gotten used to the sound of my own footsteps, the clink of a spoon in a coffee mug, the way the floor creaked near the hallway at 2 a.m. I stopped waiting for her keys to jingle in the lock, stopped imagining her perfume lingering in the air after she passed by. The ghost of Rachel faded slower than I wanted, but eventually, even ghosts get tired of haunting the same place. It wasn't forgiveness that came next. It was understanding. I learned how to sit with pain without feeding it, how to feel lonely without calling it failure. And I started asking questions, not about her, but about me. Why didn't I push harder when the distance started growing? Why did I mistake quiet for peace? Why did I ignore the ache in my chest and call it patience? Grace, my therapist, once said, betrayal breaks something, but it also reveals what was already cracked. I didn't like hearing it, but it stuck. And slowly, I saw what she meant. Rachel didn't destroy us on her own. I helped, not by cheating or lying, but by shrinking, by stepping back when I should have leaned in, by mistaking her silence for survival instead of a scream muffled by fear and shame. That doesn't excuse what she did, but it makes me more human. About 6 months after the coffee shop meeting, I got a letter. Not a text, not an email, an actual handwritten letter in a pale blue envelope with no return address. I knew it was from her before I even opened it. Her handwriting was still the same, neat, sharp, with the occasional hard over and I she used to pretend was ironic. Inside, 3 pages. No apology this time. Just stories. She talked about the sea in Maine, how it sounded different from the coast back home. Deeper, quieter. She mentioned a bookstore where the owner let her arrange the poetry section. She confessed she sometimes still looked for me in crowds, even though she knew I'd never come. She ended it with a line that felt like a sigh. I hope you're living a life that doesn't feel like waiting. I folded the letter and put it in a drawer, not because I wanted to keep it, but because it didn't deserve the trash. It was a relic, a page from a story that mattered, even if it ended badly. There was one last thread I needed to pull. Daniel. I never confronted him, never reached out. Part of me wanted to drive across town, find his office, and look him in the eye. Not to threaten him, not even to yell, just to ask him one thing. Did you feel guilty? Even once. But I never did. Because some answers don't change anything. And some men, no matter how educated or articulate or full of polished empathy, are just cowards in suits. He could dissect her pain all day, but he couldn't face the damage he helped inflict. Let him live with that. Let both of them live with that. A year passed. I moved apartments. Took a job that gave me less money, but more peace. Started cooking again. For myself. not for show. I stopped checking her socials. Stopped waiting for the next update. At some point, I realized I didn't even remember the sound of her laugh anymore. That hurt, and then it didn't. I met someone. Slowly. Quietly. Not with fireworks or grand gestures. Just two people trying to be seen without wearing armor. Her name is Claire. She reads books out loud when she thinks I'm asleep. She doesn't flinch when I get quiet. She just waits. Not to be chosen, but to be known. And I let her in. Bit by bit. No more secrets. No more pretending therapy is a safe place, while turning it into a cover for betrayal. We talk. We fight, sometimes. But it's honest. It's raw. And that feels like safety. I still keep the recording. Not because I listened to it. I haven't played it since that night in the session room. But it's there. In a hidden folder on an old phone I don't use anymore. A scar in digital form. Not to be reopened. Just to remind me that I survived. People ask me sometimes, not directly, but in the sideways way friends do when they think you're ready. Do you think you'll ever really forgive her? I think maybe I already have. Not in the storybook sense. Not with a hug or a tearful reunion. But in the way a wound closes, even if the skin never quite looks the same. In the way you stop needing someone to hurt just because they hurt you. Forgiveness isn't about saying, it's okay. It's about saying, it happened. And I'm still standing. So yes, she said, he's just my therapist. And maybe, for a while, she even believed that. But the truth came out, loud and clear, in her voice. Not through her lips, but in that recording, in the way she called out his name like it belonged in her mouth more than mine ever did. Everyone heard it, especially her mother. But the person I most needed to hear it was me. Because sometimes, healing doesn't begin with answers. It begins the moment you stop lying to yourself and press play.